Welcome back to part two of why our children are leaving the church. And I do have to apologize for my background. Like I've told you before, we have just recently arrived to Honduras as missionaries, and so we are kind of living here, there, and everywhere. Hopefully, in the next week or so, we're in our permanent home, so things will be a little more settled, and you'll get a consistent background. Although who knows what that will be. So we talked about in our last video about the two reasons that we've learned so far of why children are leaving the church. And that is they aren't being given answers to hard questions. And number two, we're spending more time teaching them to be good rather than being a follower of Jesus. And that leads us right into number three. Number three is one of the reasons that researchers have seen that children are leaving the church. And again, I'm saying children are leaving the church is because they might still be sitting in the pews. They might still be coming to your VBSs. But in their minds, they're already gone. They've already decided. So we need to make sure that we're not missing out on our greatest opportunity to reach people, and that is our children. Remember, like I told you in the first lesson of this class, children won't remember everything you teach them. They'll remember how you made them feel. And if you can be a genuine person, guys, that counts for more than all of the fun projects, all of the prizes that you buy, all of the fun places that you take them. You could be the coolest junior church teacher ever. And if your life doesn't match up to what you're saying, they're gonna see it within 2 seconds. And a lot of statistics tell us that a lot of people list hypocrisy as the reason why they leave church as adults. They think that they have people that they can trust, and then they see things that are inconsistent. Now, obviously, guys, everybody's going to mess up sometimes. And as a teacher, I hate to say it, but there have been times when I have definitely messed up with my children. I've spoken too harshly to them, or in junior church, I've just come across in a way that maybe wasn't pleasing to God. And my mom always used to say that holiness people have the best backup gear, that we have that in us that just says, you know what, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to come across that way. Apologize to your kids in your Sunday school. Apologize to those kids in your junior church classroom because they need to see that you are genuine and that you have a real relationship with Christ. And I think this even applies to knowledge. It's easy to want as a teacher to make sure that you really come across that you know things, that you have this great knowledge of the Bible. And you should. I think teachers should act like they're an expert because if you act like you don't really know much, your students aren't going to want to listen to you. But at the same time, be real with them. I remember in my class when we were just reading through the Bible because every morning we had devotions together and we were reading about Paul and I made some comment about, Paul when he was, or Saul when he was saved, his name was changed to Paul. And as I was saying that, I was like, you know what? I don't know if that's actually true. When Saul got saved, did he actually get his name changed to Paul, or is that just something I've heard in VBS all my life? And so I went and looked it up in the Bible. Sure enough, Paul was just a missionary name. He was a version of Saul. His name was still Saul. He didn't have this great name change experience like Abram did. And so I had to go back and tell my kids, hey, so sorry, Mrs. Hopkins said this, but it wasn't actually what was accurate. And kids are so forgiving. Kids will forgive. They really will, guys. They will forgive so much as long as you show them that you care about them and you are genuinely following Christ with all of your heart. Number four, another reason why statistics tell us that people are leaving the church is we can be lopsided on rules versus relationship. I know we've all heard stories about people that have come out of churches where the rules were so harped on. It was do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. And that was kind of all Christianity meant to them. Guys, Christianity is so much more than just a list of rules. It's a relationship with the one who knows us and loves us. And we have to make sure we stress that to kids. However, I do worry that within the last little while, we as a church have become a little relationship heavy, if you will, because children are very black and white. And children, I'm sure probably for your education degrees, you're going to get into some child psychology, but children aren't able to differentiate all the time. I always give this analogy with my kids in class that if I have my little niece or nephew who's 3 years old and she's running to the sink because she really wants a drink of that cup of bleach that's sitting there, and in her mind that bleach just looks so delicious to drink. That 3-year-old or even that 5-year-old or honestly even that 7-year-old, sometimes they don't need an explanation of why they shouldn't drink it. They just need to know that, hey, don't drink it. Kids do need to be given rules sometimes. That these are just the clear guidelines that they know that, hey, there are rules that can make my teacher happy. There are rules that can make my parents happy. And there are rules that I can follow and they'll make God happy as well. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more at the end of how you can do that in your classroom. But guys, just make sure that you are finding ways to show them that being a Christian is a relationship with Jesus. And number five, the last one, another reason why kids are leaving the church is we aren't connecting them to the church. And by church, I mean the big overarching church. We have our awesome churches that are buildings and different groups and denominations. But guys, we're part of something so much bigger. We're part of the body of Christ that transcends time, that transcends denominational lines, and we need to connect kids to that. A lot of times, unfortunately, in our churches, it's easy to, send our kids off for their little hour session off in junior church and kind of exclude them from what's happening up in adult church. But kids need to see how God is moving in all ages. Kids, and this is well-researched statistics, kids need to have friends in all age groups. They shouldn't just be friends with people their own age. Teach your children to be friends with the senior citizens in your church and make those relationships. I remember one time at my home church in Kentucky, we were having a Wednesday night prayer meeting and we were having testimonies, and it was just kind of neat that night because so many different ages testified a similar testimony about how God was working on them about something. They wanted to be more like Christ. And you had your kids getting up and saying, I want to be like Jesus. And then all the way up to our senior saints in their 80s mentioned that, you know what, God has been working on me even this week, and I want to be more like him, and I want to stop doing something that was displeasing to the Lord. And I thought, what a neat picture for our kids to see that across all ages, we're learning and growing in Christ, that we can have a relationship with him that's real. So teach your children to be connected all the ages, but that they're also a part of the church that's gone back for centuries, that this thing called Christianity is so much bigger than anything that they can imagine, and that it's an awesome, awesome thing to be a part of. So, what about you guys? What can we do? You're heading off to be a VBS worker or whatever else, whatever field you're going to be into. And I mentioned earlier in the last video that you will work with children. Even if you never lead a VBS, even if you never teach Sunday school, I can promise you kids are eagle eyes towards the adults in their life. And you are having an influence on kids even right now. Guarantee you, those Academy kids at UBA, they know your names, they know who you are, they're watching your life. So what can we do? Well, number one, we said that kids are leaving because they aren't allowed to ask the hard questions. And this is your assignment for this video. Like I said, please comment. What are some ways that you could promote questions in a Sunday school class or in a junior church? Just a quick way that I've done this, a lot of times I'll have a question jar where kids can leave questions. However, I found kids are a lot of times shy to actually write it down and put it in there. That might be more of a teen thing. Whereas sometimes it's just helpful. When I was a classroom teacher, I just had a time like every Monday when I could just say, any questions you guys have had while you're reading the Bible, anything that doesn't make sense to you, find ways to promote questions. Number two, we said people are leaving the church sometimes because we're spending more time teaching them to be good than to be a follower of Jesus. And I think the best thing we can do with this is model what a relationship with Jesus looks like and then hold them to that standard. You're not just teaching children a list of rules to be good for the fun of it. You're teaching them because you want to make a difference in their life. Next, be genuine. Like we said, kids see behind the mask, so be a genuine person. Next, we said that people can walk away because we get lopsided on rules versus relationship. So I think one of the answers for this is give your students firm guidelines, but with reasons. A really helpful line I found, this came from Rachel England, but she said, teach your kids that when God says no, he's actually saying, don't hurt yourself. I gave you that little example of the child wanting to drink the bleach. And even if you have kids that are in first grade, they can understand, okay, you don't want the baby to drink bleach because it's going to really hurt them. But when God says no, when he says, hey, I don't want you to lie, I don't want you to steal, hey, I want you to dress like that, hey, I want you to have a clean heart. When God says these things, he knows it's for our good. He's doing it so that we don't hurt ourselves. And if you can teach that to kids, that's a pretty important step for them. Next, include children heavily in the adult service. Find ways to include them with music and testimonies, whatever else. Find ways to make sure they are included and they are a part. So, leave your answer to that discussion. How can you involve kids, or how can you make sure kids can ask questions in your church? And I look forward to seeing you next week.